Please be my daddy for just one day." The little girl's voice was small, trembling, yet filled with something so pure that the words seemed to slice right through the stillness of the winter park. The winter wind was merciless that evening, sweeping through the city with a low, haunting whistle that carried the scent of roasted chestnuts, rain-soaked asphalt, and faraway dreams. Streetlights shimmered against the slick pavement, their soft halos flickering through the falling snow that blanketed everything in a ghostly calm. It was the kind of night that made people hurry home, collars up, heads down, seeking warmth and familiarity. Yet, amid the hurried footsteps and passing taxis, stood a little girl who seemed to belong to none of it, her small figure swallowed by the vastness of the city around her. She couldn't have been more than 7. Her coat was too thin, buttoned unevenly, one boot untied and trailing wet snow with each hesitant step. A pink hat sat crooked on her head, covering most of her soft brown hair. In her hands, she clutched a paper bag so large it looked ready to tear under the weight of whatever tiny treasure she guarded inside. Her nose was pink from the cold, and her breath came in small puffs of fog, trembling as if afraid to exist. She wasn't crying, not quite, but the way her eyes darted from one stranger to another carried a quiet desperation that didn't belong on a child's face. She was searching, not for attention, but for kindness, for someone to see her. Inside a nearby café, the air was warm and golden, filled with the comforting scent of coffee and cinnamon pastries. Behind the glass, Ethan Ward sat at a corner table staring blankly at a half-empty cup that had long gone cold. He looked like a man caught between worlds, present in body but lost in memory. Once, not too long ago, his name had meant something in tall glass offices and crowded boardrooms. Ethan Ward, 34, investment banker, brilliant strategist, the man who never hesitated, never faltered. But that man had vanished the day the world took from him the only 2 souls who had ever made him human. On his phone was an old photo, one he hadn't been able to delete. A woman with honey-brown eyes smiled back at him, holding a baby wrapped in a yellow blanket. His wife, his daughter. That photo was taken on the day they brought their baby home from the hospital. He remembered the sound of his wife's laughter filling the kitchen, the warmth of sunlight streaming through the window, the scent of baby powder and hope. Now, there was only silence. That silence had followed him everywhere for 5 years, heavy and suffocating, echoing louder than any noise the city could make. He rubbed a hand over his tired eyes, ready to leave the café, when something beyond the window caught his attention. Through the frost-kissed glass, he saw her, the small girl standing alone in the snow, holding that sagging paper bag like it was the last piece of her world. There was something about her stillness, her fragile determination, that struck a chord deep within him. She didn't fit here, in this cold, indifferent street. She looked like a misplaced dream, something pure that the world had forgotten how to care for. Before his mind could catch up to his heart, Ethan stood. He left a few bills on the counter, buttoned his coat, and stepped out into the freezing air. Snow crunched softly beneath his polished shoes as he approached her, careful not to startle her. When he spoke, his voice came out gentler than it had been in years, almost uncertain, as if rediscovering warmth. "Hey there," he said, crouching so he could look her in the eyes instead of towering over her. "Are you okay? Where's your mom or dad?" The girl looked up slowly, blinking away the moisture that had gathered in her lashes. Her cheeks were flushed pink, her lips trembling. "Mommy's working late," she whispered, her voice so small it nearly vanished in the wind. "I wanted to get her some dinner, but—" She held up the paper bag with trembling fingers, the bottom torn, the contents damp. "I dropped my money." Ethan's chest tightened, the raw innocence in her voice, the quiet shame of someone too young to feel that kind of responsibility. It broke through the numbness that had encased his heart. She wasn't begging. She wasn't even asking for help. She was just trying to do something kind in a world that hadn't been kind to her. He hesitated only a moment before reaching for his wallet. "How about we go inside?" he said softly, nodding, toward the café behind him, "and get you something warm to eat? My treat." Her eyes widened a little, suspicion flickering through her fear. "You're not a bad man, are you?" she asked, clutching her bag tighter. He smiled faintly, sadly. "No, sweetheart, not anymore." Inside, the cafe's warmth wrapped around them like a blanket. Ethan led her to a booth near the window where snow fell softly outside like white feathers. The waitress shot him a curious glance but said nothing when he ordered a hot chocolate with extra whipped cream and a grilled cheese sandwich for the girl, and just another coffee for himself. When the food arrived, the girl's face lit up with shy wonder, her little hands wrapping around the mug like it was the most precious thing in the world. "What's your name?" Ethan asked after a moment, his tone light, inviting. "Lily," she said almost proudly. Then she tilted her head, studying him with childlike curiosity. "What's yours?" "Ethan." "Ethan," she repeated as if testing the sound of it. "You talk like people in movies." He chuckled softly. "Do I?" "Uh-huh." She grinned, her nose scrunching up adorably. "My mommy says people who talk like that are rich." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Are you rich?" Ethan's smile faded just slightly. His eyes drifted to the falling snow outside. "I used to be," he said quietly, "but I lost what really mattered." Lily frowned as if trying to understand. She didn't, not fully, but something in her gaze softened, as if her heart understood even when her mind didn't. After finishing her sandwich, Lily dug into the paper bag and pulled out a small wrinkled piece of folded paper covered in crayon drawings. "It's my mommy's birthday tomorrow," she said proudly. "I made this for her." Her smile faltered. "But I don't have a real present. Mommy says we don't need gifts, but she always looks sad on her birthday. I wanted her to smile this time." Ethan looked at the card. Crooked hearts, lopsided stars, the shaky handwriting of a child. "It's beautiful, Lily," he said softly. "I think it's the best kind of present there is." But Lily just looked down. "I wish I could make her happy for real. I wish she didn't have to work so much." Her little voice trembled, and she looked up at him again, eyes wide with a strange sort of hope. "Can you pretend to be my daddy for just one day?" The world seemed to still around him. The sounds of clinking cups, laughter, and snow against glass all faded into silence. He stared at her, the words hitting him like a whisper from a ghost. He wanted to speak, but nothing came out. "I don't mean forever," she hurried to say, seeing the shock in his face. "Just tomorrow, for Mommy's birthday. You can just come by and say hi. I'll tell her you're my daddy. Maybe she'll smile again." Ethan's heart twisted painfully. He opened his mouth to refuse, to explain, to say something sensible, but all he saw were those eyes. Wide, pleading, pure. Eyes that reminded him of another little girl who used to call him Daddy. The ache was too much. "Please," Lily whispered, "just one day." He took a deep breath, feeling something shift inside him, something he thought he had buried for good. "Okay," he said finally, "just one day." For a moment, time stood still. Then Lily's whole face burst into light. She jumped up from her seat and threw her arms around his neck with unrestrained joy. "Thank you, Daddy," she laughed, her voice echoing softly through the café. Ethan froze. Then, slowly, carefully, he wrapped his arms around her. It felt foreign at first, and then it felt like coming home. Outside, the snow kept falling, soft and unhurried. And for the first time in 5 long years, Ethan Ward didn't feel like a ghost. For the first time, he felt the faintest flicker of warmth, like a candle struggling to light again in a room long dark. Tomorrow, he told himself, it would only be for a day. But somewhere deep inside, he already knew. One day might not be enough. Morning crept gently across the sleeping city, painting the sky in muted shades of silver and rose. Snow blanketed the rooftops, softening the edges of the world. Ethan hadn't slept a moment. He sat by the window of his apartment, coffee untouched, his mind trapped somewhere between guilt and anticipation. He kept hearing her voice, small and trembling, "Please be my daddy for just one day." The words replayed in his chest like a heartbeat he couldn't quiet. He told himself it was only an act of kindness, a promise made to comfort a child. But every time he saw her face in his memory, smiling up at him with absolute trust, something inside him ached to protect that light. Maybe, he thought, one good day wouldn't hurt. Maybe it could even make him remember who he used to be. By 8 o'clock, he was standing outside an old brick apartment building in the quieter part of town, the kind of neighborhood where laundry lines hung across narrow courtyards and life moved slower, harder. The air smelled faintly of bread from the corner bakery, of cold metal and early morning rain. He held a small wrapped box in his hand, a necklace he'd picked out that morning. Simple silver with an engraving on the back that read, "You are loved." He wasn't sure why he bought it. Maybe because he wanted to give something that could outlast words. The creak of the front door snapped him from his thoughts. A familiar voice, bright and full of warmth, rang out through the cold air. "Mr. Ethan!" Lily came running down the steps, bundled in a pink coat too big for her, scarf wrapped crookedly around her neck. Her cheeks were red, her smile wide and genuine. She looked like a piece of sunshine that had wandered out into the snow. She grabbed his hand eagerly, eyes shining with excitement. "You came. I knew you would." Ethan smiled, the corner of his mouth lifting softly. "Of course I did," he said. "I couldn't miss your mom's birthday, could I?" "Come on!" She tugged at his coat. "Mommy's inside. I told her I have a surprise." He followed her up the narrow staircase, each step echoing softly. The walls were lined with old family photos, hand-drawn pictures, and fading wallpaper. The apartment smelled of vanilla and coffee with something faintly floral beneath it, a scent that reminded him of gentler times. His heartbeat quickened with every step, a strange mixture of nerves and curiosity filling his chest. What would her mother think? How would he even explain himself? Before he could think further, Lily flung open a door and called out, "Mommy!" "He's here." Ethan stopped in the doorway, his breath catching in his chest. Standing by the stove was a woman, late 20s, maybe early 30s, with long chestnut hair pulled into a loose bun, an apron tied around her waist, and a soft tiredness in her eyes that somehow made her even more beautiful. She turned, startled by the sound of Lily's voice, and her gaze collided with his. Her name, he would soon learn, was Grace Miller. For a heartbeat, the room froze. Grace's brow furrowed, confusion flickering across her face as she took in the tall man in an expensive coat standing awkwardly in her kitchen, holding a small gift box and looking both nervous and out of place. "Lily," she said slowly. "Who's this?" Lily, radiant with excitement, didn't notice her mother's hesitation. "It's Daddy. He came back for your birthday." Grace blinked. The spatula slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. "What?" Ethan stepped forward immediately, palms raised in apology. "I'm so sorry, this isn't—" But Lily rushed in, tugging at her mother's sleeve. "He's nice, Mommy. He helped me last night when I dropped my money. He bought me food. Please don't be mad." Grace's lips parted as she looked between them. A dozen emotions flickered in her eyes. Fear, confusion, gratitude, disbelief. And then, after a long, quiet moment, she sighed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "All right," she said gently. "Why don't you sit down, Mr. Ward," he said softly. "Ethan Ward." "Well, Mr. Ward," she said, the corners of her mouth twitching faintly, "thank you for helping my daughter. I'm sorry if she's pulled you into one of her little adventures." He smiled faintly. "No trouble at all. She's quite remarkable." The morning unfolded in a strange, fragile peace. Grace made coffee. Lily chattered endlessly, proudly showing Ethan every corner of the small apartment, the crooked bookshelf, the wall where she drew her family, the tiny plant on the windowsill named Daisy. Ethan listened to her like someone hearing life again for the first time, his laughter mingling with hers until the air no longer felt heavy. Grace watched him quietly, torn between caution and curiosity. There was something in his manner, gentle, sorrowful, sincere, that didn't match the stranger her daughter had dragged home. When Lily dashed off to her room to fetch her birthday card, Grace finally spoke. "You don't have to keep pretending," she said quietly, folding her arms, though her tone wasn't unkind. "I don't know what Lily told you, but her father left before she was born. She's always wondered, imagined. I don't want her to get attached." Ethan's eyes softened. "I understand. I didn't plan this. She just asked me to come, and I couldn't say no." He paused, then added, "She has a good heart. You've raised her well." Grace studied him, her gaze softening in spite of herself. "You've lost someone too," she said finally, not as a question but a quiet truth. He looked down at his hands. "My wife and my daughter, 5 years ago." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was heavy, but shared, like the weight of two souls who understood grief in different ways. When Lily came back, clutching a handmade card covered in bright hearts and uneven stars, the air shifted again. "Mommy!" she cried, running to her. "I made this for you. Look, Daddy came back too." Grace knelt, her eyes glistening as she read the words scrawled in pink crayon. "Happy birthday, Mommy. I love you forever. And look, Daddy came back." Her throat tightened. Ethan stood awkwardly nearby, unsure whether to smile or apologize. "Give her the present," Lily whispered excitedly, tugging at his sleeve. Ethan hesitated, then stepped forward and held out the small gift box. "It's from both of us," he said softly. Grace unwrapped it slowly. When she opened the lid and saw the delicate silver locket engraved with "You are loved," her breath caught. "Ethan, you didn't have to." "I wanted to," he said. "No one should feel alone on their birthday." For the first time that morning, Grace smiled, a small, genuine smile that reached her tired eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "It's beautiful." They spent the rest of the day together, cooking, laughing, telling stories. Lily made paper crowns and declared them birthday royalty. Ethan helped fix the broken lamp. Grace found herself laughing, really laughing for the first time in months. And as dusk fell, the little apartment glowed with warmth and something close to peace. Later, when it was time for Ethan to leave, Lily clung to his hand. "Do you have to go?" she asked softly, her eyes glassy with unshed tears. He crouched, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "I promised one day, remember? But I don't want it to end," she whispered. "Can't you be my daddy for more days?" He looked up at Grace, who stood quietly by the door, her expression unreadable. And then she smiled gently. "Maybe," she said, her voice soft as falling snow, "you could stay for dinner tomorrow too. Lily would like that." Ethan met her gaze, and something inside him loosened. A weight, a wall, something that had been holding him back from life itself. "I'd like that," he said quietly. As he stepped out into the cold night, snowflakes swirling around him, the world felt different. Lighter, brighter, alive again. He looked back once, through the frosted window, and saw Grace and Lily laughing together under the warm glow of their little kitchen light. And for the first time in years, Ethan Ward realized that sometimes love doesn't return the way you expect. Sometimes it finds you again through the voice of a little girl whispering, "Please be my daddy for just one day." Because sometimes, one day is enough to change everything.